His wife was 6 feet under frozen Montana ground. The blizzard had swallowed everything: roads, hope, tomorrow. Then came the knock. A woman he'd never seen, bleeding through her coat, holding a baby that wasn't crying. She shouldn't have been alive. She shouldn't have found his door. But Clara Vance did. And the man hunting her? Rowan knew him, hated him. Silas Crow, a ghost from a war Rowan thought he'd buried. Stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The wind didn't howl anymore. It screamed. Rowan Hale pressed his forehead against the cabin window, watching white erase the world. 3 days since Margaret died. 3 days since he'd buried her in ground so frozen he'd broken 2 shovels getting deep enough. 3 days since his son, their son, had started crying and hadn't stopped. The baby's wails filled every corner of the cabin, thin and desperate, the sound of something dying slowly. Rowan had tried everything: warm water, his finger dipped in honey, walking circles until his legs shook. Nothing worked. The boy was starving, and Rowan had nothing to give him. He'd named him Thomas, after Margaret's father. She'd made him promise, made him say it out loud 2 days before the fever took her. "Thomas," she'd whispered, her hand cold in his. "You tell him about me, Rowan. Every day. You tell him." Rowan hadn't cried then. Hadn't cried digging the grave. Hadn't cried standing over the mound of rocks he'd piled to keep animals out. But now, listening to Thomas scream himself hoarse, he felt something crack behind his ribs. The cabin was small. One room with a loft Rowan barely used. A stone fireplace Margaret had loved. A table he'd built the first winter they were married. Everything still smelled like her. Lavender soap, bread she'd baked the morning before the fever hit. He couldn't wash her pillowcase. Couldn't put away her sewing basket. Couldn't do anything but stand here, useless, while his son starved. Outside, the storm turned the afternoon dark as midnight. Snow piled against the door, crept through cracks in the window frame, turned the world into something unrecognizable. The nearest town, if you could call Shepherd's Bend a town, was 8 miles south. Might as well have been 800. Nobody was coming. Nobody could. Rowan walked to the cradle he'd built before Thomas was born. The baby's face was red and twisted, mouth open, tiny fists shaking. 4 pounds, maybe 5. So small, Rowan was afraid to hold him too tight. So fragile, he might just stop breathing if Rowan looked away. "I know," Rowan said, his voice rough. "I know, son. I'm trying." He tried the goat milk this morning. Thomas had choked on it, spit it up, screamed even louder. Rowan had read somewhere that babies needed their mothers. Something about the milk being different, special, impossible to replace. He'd read it in one of Margaret's books, the ones she'd brought from Boston when they'd headed west. She'd laughed when he teased her about packing books instead of extra blankets. "Books keep you warm in different ways," she'd said. She'd been wrong. Books didn't do a damn thing when you were alone and your son was dying. Rowan picked up Thomas, cradled him against his chest. The baby's cries softened for a moment, then came back twice as hard. Rowan closed his eyes. The weight of him, so light it didn't seem real, pressed against Rowan's heart like a stone. "Please," Rowan whispered. To who, he didn't know. Margaret, the storm, anyone. "Please." The knock came so sudden Rowan thought he'd imagined it. 3 sharp raps, hard enough to hear over the wind. He froze. Thomas kept crying. Rowan turned toward the door, his pulse kicking up. Nobody traveled in weather like this. Nobody sane, anyway. He'd checked the barn twice today. The horses were fine, the chickens huddled together, nothing out of place. No reason for anyone to be out here. The knock came again, louder. Rowan laid Thomas back in the cradle, grabbed the rifle from above the mantel, and crossed to the door. His hands were steady. That part of him, the part that had gone to war at 17 and come back at 20, never shook. He checked the load, thumbed the hammer back, and pulled the door open 6 inches. The cold hit him like a fist. A woman stood on his porch, heavy set, soaked through, her coat torn at the shoulder, blood on her collar. She was holding something wrapped in a blanket. Another baby, Rowan realized. Not crying, just staring up at the woman's face with dark, quiet eyes. "Help," the woman said. Her voice was steady, but her legs weren't. She swayed, caught herself on the doorframe. Please, Rowan stared. She shouldn't have been standing, shouldn't have been alive. The storm had been going for 2 days straight, temperatures dropping so low the water in the trough had frozen solid. Nobody survived that on foot. Who are you? Rowan asked. Clara Vance. She looked past him into the cabin and her eyes locked on Thomas in the cradle. That baby's starving. None of your business. It will be if you let him die. Clara shifted the bundle in her arms. I can feed him. Let me in. Rowan didn't move. Why should I? Because if you don't, you'll bury another body tomorrow. Clara's face was pale, her lips cracked and bleeding, but her eyes were sharp, focused. And I don't think you've got another grave in you. She was right. Rowan hated that she was right. He stepped aside. Clara walked in, dripping snow and blood onto Margaret's clean floor, and went straight to the cradle. She knelt down, slow, like it hurt, and looked at Thomas. The baby screamed in her face. She didn't flinch. How old? She asked. 4 days. Mother? Rowan's jaw tightened. Dead. Clara nodded once, like she'd expected it. She stood, wincing, and moved to the chair by the fire. She unwrapped the baby in her arms, a girl, maybe 2 months old, with a round face and Margaret's dark hair, and set her down gently in the seat. Then Clara started unbuttoning her coat. What are you doing? Rowan asked. What you can't. Clara pulled the coat off, then her outer shirt. Underneath, her blouse was stained red across the ribs. She didn't look at it, just picked up Thomas and sat down. Rowan turned away, not out of modesty. He'd seen worse in the war, but because watching her feed his son felt like admitting defeat, like admitting Margaret was really gone. Thomas stopped crying. The silence hit Rowan harder than the cold. He turned back. Clara was watching the baby, her face unreadable, one hand supporting his head. Thomas's tiny fists were clenched, his eyes half closed, his breathing soft. There, Clara said quietly. That's better. Rowan's throat closed up. He set the rifle down, leaned against the wall, and tried to breathe. You're bleeding, he said finally. I know. How bad? Bad enough. Clara didn't look up. But not bad enough to stop. Stop what? Running. Rowan studied her. She was older than him, maybe 35, 40, with lines around her eyes and hands that looked like they'd worked hard for a long time. Her hair was brown, streaked with gray, tied back in a braid that was half undone. She didn't look like someone who scared easy. Who's after you? Rowan asked. Clara met his eyes. A man named Silas Crow. The name hit Rowan like a bullet. He straightened, his pulse spiking. What did you say? Silas Crow. Clara's voice didn't change. You know him. Yeah, Rowan's hands curled into fists. I know him. Then you know what he is. Rowan didn't answer. He was back in Tennessee, summer of '64, watching Silas beat a Confederate prisoner with the butt of a rifle until the man's face wasn't a face anymore. The officers didn't stop him. Nobody stopped him. Silas Crow did what he wanted, and people looked the other way because he was useful, because he got results. Rowan had hated him then, hated him enough to take a swing at him once, earned himself a broken nose and 2 weeks of digging latrines. When the war ended, Rowan headed west and tried to forget Silas existed. Why's he after you? Rowan asked. Clara looked back down at Thomas. Because I took something he thinks belongs to him. The baby? No. Clara's jaw tightened. My sister. Rowan waited. Silas runs a house in Billings, Clara said. Girls, young ones mostly. He brought my sister there 2 years ago, told her it was a boarding house, told her she'd have work. She was 16. Clara's voice stayed flat, controlled. I got her out 3 weeks ago. He's been following us since. Where is she now? Dead. Clara's hand trembled, just once. I think. We got separated in the storm. She ran one way, I ran the other. I heard a gunshot. Rowan felt something cold settle in his chest. How many men? 4 last I saw. In this weather? Silas doesn't stop. Clara shifted Thomas to her other side. Not for weather, not for anything. Rowan crossed to the window, looked out at the white void beyond the glass. If Silas was out there, he was either dead or close. And if he was close, Rowan had maybe a day before he came knocking. "You brought him here," Rowan said. "I didn't plan to." Clara's voice hardened. "I was trying to get to the rail line. Storm pushed me north. Your cabin was the first light I saw. You should have kept walking." "Maybe," Clara looked up at him. "But your son would be dead by morning." Rowan turned back to her. Thomas was asleep now, his face soft and peaceful in a way Rowan hadn't seen since Margaret died. The sight of it, his son, alive, fed, quiet, made something inside Rowan unravel. "Thank you," Rowan said quietly. Clara nodded. "Don't thank me yet." She was right. Rowan walked to the door, checked the lock, checked the windows. The storm was getting worse, visibility down to nothing. Even if Silas was close, he wouldn't move tonight, too dangerous. But tomorrow was a different story. "You need a doctor," Rowan said, nodding at Clara's side. "I need a needle and thread." Rowan fetched Margaret's sewing kit, brought it to Clara along with a bottle of whiskey. She set Thomas back in the cradle. He didn't wake, and pulled her blouse up. The wound was a gash, long and deep, running from her ribs to her hip. Not a bullet. A knife, maybe. "He do that?" Rowan asked. "One of his men." Clara poured whiskey over the wound, didn't make a sound. "I did worse to him." She threaded the needle, started stitching herself up. Rowan watched for a moment, then looked away. The girl, Clara's baby, he assumed, was still in the chair, awake now, staring at him with those dark, serious eyes. "What's her name?" Rowan asked. "Rose." "She yours?" "She is now." Clara tied off the thread, bit it clean. "Her mother died in Billings, fever. I took her before Silas could sell her." Rowan's stomach turned. "He sells babies?" "Sells anything." Clara pulled her blouse down, leaned back in the chair. "Girls, boys, weapons, information. Silas Crow is a businessman, Rowan, and business is good." Rowan sat down across from her. The fire crackled between them, casting shadows that made Clara's face look older, harder. "Why didn't you go to the law?" Rowan asked. Clara laughed, short, bitter. "The law in Billings works for Silas. Half the sheriff's office is on his payroll. You think I didn't try? I walked into that station with my sister, told them everything. You know what they did?" She leaned forward. "They sent us back to the house. Told Silas we'd been causing trouble. He locked us in the cellar for 3 days. Rowan's hands tightened on the armrests. "How'd you get out?" "Killed the man guarding us." Clara said it like she was talking about the weather. "Took his keys, his gun, and ran. Got my sister, got Rose, and headed for the rail line. We made it 2 days before Silas caught up." "And your sister?" Clara looked at the fire. "She told me to run. Said she'd lead them off, give me time. I heard the shot an hour later." "You don't know she's dead." "I know Silas." Clara's voice went quiet. "If he caught her, she's dead. If he didn't, the storm got her. Either way, she's gone." Rowan didn't argue. He'd seen enough death to know when someone was past hoping. They sat in silence for a while. Thomas slept. Rose stared. The wind rattled the windows, shook the walls, reminded them both that the world outside was trying to kill them. "How long can you stay?" Clara asked finally. Rowan looked at her. "This is my home." "I know. But if Silas finds me here, then we deal with it." "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." Rowan stood, walked to the mantel, picked up the rifle. "Silas Crow is a monster. I knew it in the war. I know it now. And I'm not letting him walk onto my land and take what he wants." Clara studied him. "You got a death wish?" "I got a son." Rowan looked at Thomas. "And I got nothing left to lose." That wasn't true, and they both knew it. But it felt true, felt solid enough to build on. Clara stood, slow and careful, and walked to the window. She looked out at the storm, her reflection pale and ghostly in the glass. "He'll come," she said. "Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not this week, but he'll come. Let him." Clara turned to face him. "You sure about this?" Rowan met her eyes. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." She smiled, just a little, just enough to crack the hardness in her face. "You're a fool, Rowan Hale." Wouldn't be the first time. Clara walked back to the chair, picked up Rose, held her close. "Then we'd better get ready. But The storm lasted 3 more days. Rowan spent them preparing. He checked every window, every door, every weak point in the cabin's defenses. He moved furniture, stacked firewood against the walls for extra insulation, and counted his ammunition. 23 rounds for the rifle, 16 for the revolver. Not enough if Silas brought all 4 men. Enough if Rowan made every shot count. Clara healed fast. Faster than she should have, Rowan thought, but he didn't ask questions. She fed Thomas every few hours, kept Rose quiet, and helped where she could. She wasn't much for conversation, but she worked hard. Fixed a loose shutter Rowan had been ignoring for months, patched a hole in the roof, reorganized the pantry like she'd been living there for years. Margaret would have liked her, Rowan thought. They had the same no-nonsense way of moving through the world, the same refusal to sit still when there was work to be done. On the 4th night, the storm broke. Rowan woke to silence. No wind, no rattling windows, just the soft crackle of the dying fire and the sound of his own breathing. He sat up, looked around the dark cabin. Clara was asleep in Margaret's chair, Rose bundled in her arms. Thomas was in the cradle, quiet and still. Rowan pulled on his boots, grabbed the rifle, and stepped outside. The world was white and clean and impossibly bright under a sky full of stars. Snow covered everything, the porch, the barn, the fence line, the graves. Margaret's grave was just a lump in the distance, marked by the cross Rowan had driven into the frozen ground. He stood there for a long time, breathing cold air, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, Silas Crow was coming. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. But coming. Rowan wasn't ready. Wasn't sure he'd ever be ready. But he'd stand anyway. The door creaked behind him. Clara stepped out, wrapped in a blanket, her breath fogging in the cold. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "Never could after a storm." Clara walked to the edge of the porch, looked out at the snow. "It's beautiful." "Yeah. Won't last. Never does." They stood in silence, 2 people who'd lost too much, waiting for the next thing to take what little they had left. "You still think this is a good idea?" Clara asked. Rowan looked at her. "No. But you're doing it anyway." "Yeah," Clara smiled. "Then I guess we're both fools." Rowan almost laughed. Almost. Inside the cabin, Thomas started crying, soft, hungry cries that didn't sound desperate anymore. Clara turned, headed back inside. Rowan followed. They had maybe a day, maybe 2. And then Silas Crow would come, and Rowan would find out if he had enough fight left in him to matter. He checked the rifle one more time, set it by the door, and sat down by the fire. The waiting had begun. Teats. Morning came slow and cold. Rowan fed the horses, checked the chickens, walked the fence line. Everything looked normal, peaceful, like the storm had washed the world clean and left it new. He didn't trust it. Clara was up when he came back inside, nursing Thomas while Rose sat on the floor playing with a wooden spoon. The cabin smelled like coffee, and something Rowan couldn't name, something alive, something that hadn't been there since Margaret died. "See anything?" Clara asked. "No, that's worse." "I know." Rowan poured himself coffee, sat down at the table. Clara watched him over Thomas's head. "You ever think about running?" she asked. "Every day since Margaret died." "Why don't you?" Rowan looked at the cradle, at his son. "Because running doesn't fix anything, just puts off the end." Clara nodded. "That's what my sister said." They didn't talk after that, just sat in the quiet, drinking coffee, listening to the babies make small, soft sounds. At noon, Rowan saw the rider. He was checking the barn when he spotted movement on the southern ridge, a single horse, moving slow through the snow. Too far to see details, but close enough to know someone was coming. Rowan ran back to the cabin, grabbed the rifle. "Company," he said. Clara stood, handed Thomas to Rowan, and pulled a knife from her boot. Small blade, wickedly sharp. She held it like she knew how to use it. "How many?" she asked. "1. For now." They waited. Rowan stood by the window, rifle ready. Clara moved to the other side of the door, knife in hand. Rose sat in the chair, quiet and wide-eyed. Thomas slept. The rider came closer. Tall, thin, wearing a long coat and a wide-brimmed hat. He stopped 50 yards from the cabin, dismounted, raised both hands. Rowan Hale, he called out. His voice was smooth, friendly. Mind if I come up? Rowan didn't answer. The man walked forward, slow and careful, hands still raised. When he got close enough, Rowan saw his face, narrow, clean-shaven, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He wore a badge on his coat, Sheriff's star, polished and bright. Name's Garrett, the man said. Sheriff Garrett, out of Billings. I'm looking for a woman. Plenty of women in Billings, Rowan said through the door. Garrett laughed. That's true enough, but I'm looking for a specific one. Clara Vance, wanted for murder. You seen her? Rowan felt Clara tense beside him. No, Rowan said. You sure? Big woman, brown hair, traveling with a baby. Maybe came through during the storm. Nobody came through. Garrett tilted his head. Mind if I take a look around? Yeah, I mind. Now, Mr. Hale, I'm just doing my job here. Woman I'm looking for is dangerous. Killed a man in cold blood, ran off with stolen property. I'd hate for you to be harboring a fugitive without knowing it. Rowan stepped outside, rifle in hand. I said no. Garrett's smile stayed in place, but his eyes went cold. That's not real neighborly of you. We're 8 miles from town. We're not neighbors. Fair point. Garrett looked past Rowan, toward the cabin. You out here alone? That's my business. I'm just making conversation. I'm not. They stared at each other. Garrett's hand drifted toward his belt. Rowan raised the rifle an inch. Easy, Garrett said, smile widening. No need for that. I'll be on my way. He backed toward his horse, still watching Rowan. But if you do see this woman, you let me know. There's a reward, $500. I'll keep that in mind. Garrett mounted up, tipped his hat. You take care now, Mr. Hale. Storm like that, man could get hurt out here all alone. He rode off, slow and easy, like he had all the time in the world. Rowan watched him until he disappeared over the ridge. Then he went back inside, locked the door, and set the rifle down. Clara was pale. He's scouting, she said. I know. He'll be back. I know. With Silas, Rowan nodded. How long? Day? Maybe 2. Clara sat down, her hands shaking. They know I'm here. They think you're here. Big difference. Not to Silas. Rowan reloaded the rifle, checked the revolver. 23 rounds, 16, not enough. We need more guns, he said. Clara looked up. I know where to get them. They buried the guns at midnight. Clara led Rowan to a spot half a mile north, near a lightning-split pine tree that stood alone in a clearing. She'd hidden them there on her way to the cabin. 2 rifles, a shotgun, and a box of ammunition she'd taken from the man she'd killed in Billings. They dug through 2 feet of snow, pulled the weapons out, and carried them back to the cabin. Rowan cleaned them while Clara kept watch. The rifles were old but functional. The shotgun was newer, double-barreled, the kind you used when you wanted to stop something big. Where'd you learn to shoot? Rowan asked. My father. Clara didn't look up from the window. He ran a ranch in Wyoming. Taught me and my sister everything, how to ride, how to shoot, how to gut a deer. Said women needed to know how to take care of themselves. Smart man. Dead man. Clara's voice went flat. Silas killed him 5 years ago. Wanted the land. Father wouldn't sell. Rowan stopped cleaning. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm not. Clara finally looked at him. Sorry doesn't bring people back, doesn't fix anything. All it does is make you feel better about doing nothing. She was right. Rowan had said sorry at Margaret's grave, said it to Thomas when the baby cried, said it to himself every night in the dark. It hadn't changed a damn thing. He finished with the guns, loaded them all, and set them by the door. Tomorrow, Rowan said, we fortify. Clara nodded. And then? Then we wait. They didn't sleep that night. Just sat by the fire, watching the babies, listening for hoofbeats that didn't come. But they would. Rowan knew Silas, knew the way he worked, slow and careful, circling like a wolf, waiting for the right moment to strike. He wouldn't rush, wouldn't make mistakes, which meant Rowan had to. He looked at Clara across the fire. She was staring at Rose, her face soft in a way it hadn't been before. You love her, Rowan said. Clara blinked. What? Rose, you love her. Clara's jaw tightened. She's not mine. You said she is now. That's different. How? Clara didn't answer, just looked back at the fire. I loved Margaret, Rowan said quietly. Loved her the day I met her, loved her the day she died. But I didn't know how to tell her, didn't know how to say it out loud. Thought I had time. He looked at Thomas. I was wrong. Clara's hands curled into fists. Don't. Don't what? Don't try to make this about something it's not. Rose is alive because I took her. That's all. That's not all. It is to me. They sat in silence. Outside, the wind picked up again. Not a storm, just a whisper, a reminder. You're a good mother, Rowan said. Clara's breath hitched. She stood, fast and angry, and walked to the other side of the room. Don't, she said again, her voice shaking. Don't say that. Rowan didn't push, didn't have the right, but he knew he was right, and so did she. The sun rose red the next morning. Rowan stood on the porch, watching the sky burn, and knew today was the day. He'd felt it before, Afghanistan, after the IED took half his platoon. That same weight in the air, that same certainty that the world was about to break open and swallow everything whole. He went back inside. Clara was awake, feeding Thomas. Rose was on the floor, playing with a rag doll Margaret had made years ago. They're coming, Rowan said. Clara looked up. You sure? Yeah. She didn't ask how he knew, just nodded, handed Thomas back, and started moving. They spent the morning turning the cabin into a fortress. Rowan dragged the heavy table to the door, wedged it tight. Clara nailed shutters over the windows, left gaps to shoot through. They filled buckets with snow, set them by the fire in case something caught. Rowan moved ammunition to every corner of the room, made sure he could reload no matter where he was standing. By noon, they were ready. By 1, they were waiting. At 2, the riders came. 4 of them, just like Clara said. They came slow, spread out, rifles across their saddles. Rowan watched from the window. The man in front was big, bigger than Rowan, bigger than anyone had a right to be. Broad shoulders, thick arms, a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. Silas Crow. He stopped 100 yards out, dismounted, and walked forward alone. Clara, he called out. His voice was deep, rough, the kind of voice that didn't need to yell to carry. I know you're in there. Rowan looked at Clara. She was white-knuckled on the shotgun, her jaw set. Don't answer, Rowan said. Clara, Silas called again. Come on out, we can talk about this. Silence. Silas sighed, loud and theatrical. You're making this harder than it needs to be. He turned, nodded to the men behind him. One of them raised a rifle. Rowan fired first. The shot cracked through the air, kicked up snow 2 feet from the rifleman's horse. The horse reared, the man cursed, and Silas laughed. There you are! Silas grinned, looking straight at the cabin. Rowan Hale! I thought that was you. Rowan didn't answer. You remember me? Silas asked. Tennessee, summer of '64. You broke my nose, Rowan remembered. Remembered Silas laughing afterward, blood pouring down his face, saying, You hit like a girl, Hale. I've been wanting to thank you for that, Silas continued. Really taught me something. He spread his arms wide. Taught me that some people just don't know when to quit. Leave, Rowan called back. Can't do that? Silas shook his head. Claire's got something that belongs to me. She doesn't belong to you. Not her. The baby. Silas pointed at the cabin. That baby girl is worth money, Hale. Good money. And I intend to collect. Rowan's blood went cold. You're selling babies now? Rowan shouted. I'm selling anything now. Silas laughed again. War's over, Hale. Time to make a living. Rowan sighted down the rifle, aimed center mass. Last chance, Rowan said quietly. Silas must have seen something in Rowan's posture because he stopped smiling. You know what happens if you pull that trigger? Silas asked. You know how this ends? Yeah, Rowan said. You die. Maybe, but so do you. I'm fine with that. They stared at each other across 100 yards of snow. Then Silas smiled again. All right, Hale. You made your choice. He turned, walked back to his horse, and mounted up. Burn it, he said to his men. They rode forward, torches in hand. Rowan fired. The first man went down, clutching his shoulder. The second dove off his horse, rolled, came up shooting. Rowan ducked, the bullet punching through the wall 6 inches from his head. Clara fired the shotgun. The blast was deafening. One of the horses went down, screaming. The rider hit the ground hard, didn't get up. Rowan reloaded, fired again. Missed, fired, hit. The man dropped his torch, stumbled back, fell. 3 down, 1 left. Silas. He was still on his horse 50 yards out, watching, not moving, not shooting, just watching. Then he turned his horse and rode away. Rowan lowered the rifle, his hand shaking. "Is it over?" Clara asked. "No," Rowan said. "It's just starting." The bodies lay in the snow for 3 hours before Rowan dragged them into the barn. He didn't want to. Wanted to leave them there, let the cold do its work, let Silas come back and see what happened to men who rode onto his land with torches. But Clara was right. Dead men drew attention. Wolves, ravens. More importantly, questions. "Help me," Rowan said, grabbing the first corpse by the ankles. Clara didn't move. He was standing in the doorway, shotgun still in her hands, staring at the blood in the snow. Rose was crying inside. Thomas, too. But Clara didn't turn around. "Clara?" "I know him," she said quietly. Rowan looked at the body he was holding. Young guy, maybe 25, with red hair and a face that would have been handsome if half of it wasn't missing. The shotgun had done that. "Who is he?" Rowan asked. "Danny Reese worked at the house. He was—" Clara stopped. "He was kind to the girls, brought them food when Silas wasn't looking, snuck them blankets." Rowan let the body drop. "He came here with a torch." "I know. He would have burned us alive." "I know." Clara finally looked at him. Her eyes were dry, but something in them was cracked. "But he was kind once. That should count for something." Rowan wanted to argue. Wanted to say that kind didn't matter when you were dead, that intentions didn't stop bullets, that the only thing separating good men from bad men was what they did when it mattered. But he didn't. Because he'd known good men who did bad things. Hell, he'd been one. "Get the babies quiet," Rowan said. "I'll handle this." Clara went inside. Rowan dragged all 3 bodies into the barn, laid them out in the back stall, covered them with old tarps. The horses watched him, nervous and snorting. They could smell death. Animals always could. The 3rd body, the one Rowan had shot in the shoulder, wasn't dead yet. He was curled on his side, breathing shallow, blood pooling under him. Rowan knelt down, checked the wound. Bullet had gone through clean, but it had nicked something important. The man was pale, shaking, his lips blue. "Please," the man whispered. "Please. I don't want to die." Rowan sat back on his heels. "Should have thought of that before you came here." I didn't have a choice. Silas said we were just supposed to scare you. With torches. He said you'd run. Everyone runs." Rowan stood. "I'm not everyone." The man grabbed Rowan's boot. "Please, I got a wife, a daughter. They're in Billings. If I don't come back, then they'll mourn." Rowan pulled his boot free. "Same as everyone else." He walked out of the barn, shut the door, and leaned against it. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from something else. Something that felt like the war, like standing over bodies and wondering if he'd ever stop making them. Inside the cabin, the babies had gone quiet. Rowan washed his hands in the snow, scrubbed until his skin was raw, and went back inside. Clara was in Margaret's chair nursing Thomas. Rose was asleep on a blanket by the fire. The cabin smelled like gunpowder and something metallic that wouldn't go away no matter how many times Rowan scrubbed. "One's still alive," Rowan said. Clara's hands tightened on Thomas. "Kill him. He's got a family." "So did my sister." Clara looked up. "So did the girls in Billings. So did my father. Silas doesn't care about families, Rowan. And neither should you." Rowan sat down across from her. "I'm not Silas." "No, you're worse." Clara's voice went cold. "Because you still think mercy matters. Silas knows it doesn't. That's why he wins." "Then we're already lost." "Maybe." Clara shifted Thomas to her other side. "Or maybe you just need to decide what you're willing to lose." Rowan didn't answer. He knew what he was willing to lose. He'd lost it already. Margaret was gone. His old life was gone. The man he'd been before the war, the one who believed in right and wrong, in justice, in things getting better, that man was buried deeper than any grave. What was left? A son who wouldn't remember him, a stranger in his house, and a ghost from the war who wanted to burn it all down. I'll take care of it, Rowan said finally. Clara nodded. Don't take too long. Silas won't. Rowan grabbed the revolver, walked back to the barn. The man was still breathing, but barely. His eyes were closed, his face slack. He looked younger now, maybe 20, maybe less. Rowan aimed the revolver at his head. The man's eyes opened. Do it, he whispered. Just do it. Rowan's finger tightened on the trigger. Then he lowered the gun. What's your name? Rowan asked. James Cutler. Your wife's name? Anne. Your daughter? Mary, she's 3. Rowan holstered the revolver, grabbed a blanket from the shelf, and covered James with it. You tell Silas what happened here. You tell him I let you live. You tell him if he comes back, I won't. James stared at him. Why? Because I want him to know I'm not afraid. Rowan stood. And because your daughter deserves a father. He walked out before he could change his mind. Clara was waiting on the porch. You didn't kill him. No. You should have. I know. They stood in the cold, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. The snow was turning pink, then red, then dark. Somewhere out there, Silas was regrouping, planning, coming back stronger. He'll use it against you, Clara said. Let him. You think mercy makes you better than him? No. Rowan looked at her. But it makes me different. And right now, that's all I got. Clara shook her head. You're going to get us killed. Probably. She almost smiled. You're honest, I'll give you that. They went back inside. Rowan barred the door, checked the windows, reloaded every gun in the house. Clara put the babies down, then sat by the fire cleaning the shotgun. They didn't talk. Didn't need to. They both knew what was coming. At midnight, James Cutler started screaming. Rowan ran to the barn, found him convulsing, blood pouring from his mouth. The wound had turned black, infection spreading faster than Rowan had ever seen. He'd seen it in the war, blood poisoning, gangrene, the body eating itself from the inside out. I'm sorry, Rowan said, kneeling beside him. James couldn't answer. His eyes were wide, terrified, locked on something Rowan couldn't see. Rowan pulled the revolver, put it to James's temple, and fired. The screaming stopped. Rowan sat there for a long time, the gun heavy in his hand, the smell of powder thick in the air. He'd killed 16 men in the war, 16 that he knew of anyway. Some up close, some from a distance, some who saw it coming, some who didn't. This was 17. He wondered if there'd be more before this was over. He already knew the answer. When Rowan came back inside, Clara was awake. She looked at the gun in his hand, at the blood on his shirt, and nodded. Better that way, she said. Maybe. You did the right thing. Rowan set the gun down. Doesn't feel like it. It never does. They sat in silence until dawn. The next morning, Garrett came back. He rode up alone, hands empty, that same smile on his face like nothing had happened, like 3 men hadn't died on this land less than 24 hours ago. Morning, Mr. Hale, Garrett called from his horse. Mind if we talk? Rowan stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. Say what you need to say. I'm looking for some men. 4 of them rode out this way yesterday. Haven't come back. Haven't seen them. Garrett's smile widened. Now that's strange because their horses came back to town this morning. No riders, just blood on the saddles. Rowan didn't blink. Lot of dangerous country out here. Wolves, bears. Easy to get hurt if you're not careful. That's true. Garrett dismounted, walked a few steps closer. But I'm thinking these boys didn't run into wolves. What are you thinking? I'm thinking maybe they ran into you. Rowan raised the rifle an inch. You accusing me of something, Sheriff? Not accusing, just wondering. Garrett looked past Rowan, toward the cabin. You know, it's funny. I rode past here yesterday, didn't see anyone. Now there's smoke from 2 chimneys. Fresh tracks in the snow. Sounds like babies crying. He cocked his head. You got family visiting, Mr. Hale? None of your business. See, that's where you're wrong. Garrett's smile finally dropped. Everything in this territory is my business. And right now, my business is finding Clara Vance. Already told you, haven't seen her. And I'm saying I don't believe you. Rowan sighted down the rifle. Then we got a problem. Garrett studied him. You know what Silas Crow does to people who cross him? I know what I do to people who threaten me on my own land. That right? Garrett laughed, but it was cold. You kill 4 of his men and think that's the end of it? Silas isn't like other people, Hale. He doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. He'll come back with 20 men next time, 30. He'll burn this place to ash and everything in it. Let him try. He won't just kill you, he'll kill everyone you care about. That woman in there, the babies, he'll make you watch. Garrett took another step forward. But it doesn't have to be that way. You hand over Clara, I'll tell Silas you cooperated. Maybe he lets you live. Maybe isn't good enough. It's the best offer you're going to get. Rowan's finger moved to the trigger. Here's my offer. You get on your horse, you ride back to Billings, and you tell Silas Crow that if he wants Clara Vance, he can come get her himself. No more deputies, no more hired guns, just him. Garrett stared. You're insane. Probably. He'll kill you. He can try. Garrett shook his head, backing toward his horse. You're a dead man, Hale. You just don't know it yet. Been dead before, Rowan said. Didn't take. Garrett mounted up, looked down at Rowan one last time. I'll be back for the bodies. They're in the barn. Help yourself. Garrett rode off. Rowan watched until he was gone, then lowered the rifle and went back inside. Clara was at the window, Rose in her arms. You shouldn't have done that. Done what? Challenged him. Now Silas knows you're not scared. Good. I want him to know. Why? Because scared men make mistakes. Rowan set the rifle down. And I need him to make one. Clara looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. But he'd learned something in the war that most men didn't live long enough to understand. Fear was a weapon, and the man who controlled it controlled the fight. What's your plan? Clara asked. Don't have one yet. That's reassuring. I'm working on it. Clara sat down, exhausted. Rose grabbed at her hair, pulling hard. Clara winced but didn't stop her. We can't stay here. Yes, we can. Rowan, this is my home. His voice came out harder than he meant. Margaret's buried here. My son was born here. I'm not running. Then you'll die here. Maybe. But at least I'll die standing. Clara's eyes filled with something that might have been tears, but she blinked them away. You don't owe me anything. I know. So why are you doing this? Rowan looked at Thomas, asleep in the cradle. So small. So fragile. So completely dependent on someone staying alive long enough to take care of him. Because if I run now, I'll run forever, Rowan said, and I can't raise my son like that. Clara was quiet for a long time. Then she stood, walked to the table, and pulled something from her pocket. A piece of paper, folded and worn. She handed it to Rowan. What is this? He asked. Map. My sister drew it before we ran. Shows every place Silas operates, every safe house, every cache, every contact. Clara's voice was steady. She was smart. Smarter than me. She knew we'd need leverage if we got caught. Rowan unfolded the map. It was detailed. Streets, buildings, names. Half of Billings was marked. This is everything, Rowan said. Everything Silas built. Everything he protects. Clara met his eyes. You want leverage? That's leverage. Take it to the federal marshals. They've been trying to pin something on Silas for years. This is enough to bury him. Why didn't you use it? Because I didn't trust them. Still don't. Clara's jaw tightened. But you were a soldier. You know how to talk to men like that. How to make them listen. Rowan stared at the map. If this was real, if even half of it was accurate, it was enough to bring down Silas's entire operation. Not just him. Everyone working for him. Every corrupt lawman, every paid-off judge, every politician in his pocket. Where's the nearest marshal? Rowan asked. Helena. 3 days' ride north. That's a week round trip. I know. Rowan looked at Clara, at Thomas, at Rose. I can't leave you here alone. You have to. Clara's voice didn't waver. It's the only way to end this. Silas isn't going to stop. You know that. But if the marshals come, if they have proof, he can't buy his way out. She was right. Rowan hated it, but she was right. What if Silas comes while I'm gone? Rowan asked. Then I'll handle it. With what? Clara picked up the shotgun. This? Rowan almost laughed. Almost. You really think you can hold off Silas and 20 men with a shotgun? No. Clara smiled, cold and sharp. But I can make it expensive. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Rowan showed Clara where he kept the spare ammunition, how to bar the doors from the inside, which windows had the best lines of fire. He moved furniture again, created choke points, turned the cabin into a kill box. Clara watched, asked questions, memorized everything. She was a fast learner, faster than anyone Rowan had trained in the war. "You've done this before," Rowan said. "My father was paranoid, taught us to think like soldiers." Clara checked the shotgun's load for the third time. Said the frontier wasn't safe for women unless they knew how to fight. He was right. He was. Clara's face went dark. Didn't save him, though. That night, Rowan packed light. Ammunition, food, water, the map. He saddled the strongest horse, checked the tack twice, and tried not to think about everything that could go wrong. Clara stood on the porch, Rose asleep against her shoulder. Thomas was inside, quiet for once. 3 days there, Rowan said. 3 days back, maybe 1 day to convince the marshals. That's a week. I can last a week. Clara, I know what I'm doing, Rowan. She shifted Rose, looked at him directly. And I know what I'm risking, but this is the only way. You know it is. Rowan wanted to argue, wanted to stay, wanted to build the walls higher and pretend that would be enough. But it wouldn't. It never was. If Silas comes, I'll kill as many as I can, Clara said simply. And if I can't, I'll make sure he doesn't get Rose. Rowan's blood went cold. Don't. Don't what? Don't talk like that. Why not? It's the truth. Clara's eyes were hard. I'm not letting Silas take her. I'm not letting him sell her. I'd rather... Don't say it. They stared at each other. The space between them felt like a canyon. You come back, Clara said finally. You hear me? You come back with those marshals, and we end this. I will. Promise me. Rowan hesitated. He'd made promises before. Made them to Margaret, to his unit, to men who died anyway. Promises didn't mean much when the world decided otherwise, but he said it anyway. I promise. Clara nodded. She reached out, awkward, uncertain, and touched his arm. Just once. Just for a second. Be careful, she said. You too. Rowan mounted up, took one last look at the cabin, at the smoke rising from the chimney, at the light in the window, at everything he was leaving behind, and rode north into the dark. Behind him, Clara stood on the porch until he disappeared. Then she went inside, barred the door, and checked the guns one more time. The waiting had begun again, but this time she was ready. Rowan made it 15 miles before the horse went lame. He'd pushed too hard, too fast, trying to put distance between himself and the cabin before sunrise. The mare stumbled in a frozen creek bed, came up favoring her front left leg. Rowan dismounted, checked the hoof, and cursed. Hairline fracture, maybe worse. She could walk, but not carry his weight. Not for long. He stood in the pre-dawn cold, watching his breath fog, doing math he didn't like. 3 days to Helena on a good horse. 5, maybe 6 on foot. A week and a half round trip minimum. Too long, way too long. But turning back wasn't an option. Clara was counting on him. Thomas was counting on him. And Silas Crow was probably already planning his next move. Rowan led the mare north, following the old trapper trails Margaret had shown him years ago. She'd grown up in these mountains, knew them better than anyone. The land remembers, she used to say. You just have to listen. Rowan wasn't sure what the land was saying now, but it felt wrong. Too quiet. No birds, no wind, just his boots crunching through snow and the mare's labored breathing. By noon, he saw the smoke. Thin column rising from a stand of pines, maybe a mile west. Could be trappers. Could be hunters. Could be Silas's men, waiting for him to do exactly what he was doing, leaving Clara alone. Rowan tied the mare to a tree, checked the rifle, and approached on foot. The snow was deep here, untouched except for a single set of tracks leading toward the smoke. Small tracks. A woman's, maybe. Or a kid's. He found the camp in a clearing, rough lean-to, dying fire, and a figure huddled under a blanket so covered in frost it looked like a corpse. Rowan raised the rifle. Don't move. The figure didn't move, didn't even twitch. Rowan came closer, rifle steady, and used his boot to nudge the blanket aside. A woman stared up at him with Clara's eyes. She was younger, mid-20s maybe, with the same dark hair, same strong jaw, same way of looking at someone like she was deciding whether to trust them or kill them. Her face was gray, her lips blue, and her hands were wrapped in bloody rags. "You Clara's sister," Rowan said. It wasn't a question. The woman tried to speak, but nothing came out except a wheeze. Rowan lowered the rifle, knelt down, and checked her over. Frostbite on her fingers and toes. Hypothermia. Dehydration. She'd been out here for days, maybe longer. The fact that she was still breathing was a miracle. "Can you walk?" Rowan asked. She shook her head. "Can you ride?" Another shake. Rowan looked back the way he'd come. Helena was north. Clara was south. And this woman, whoever she was dying right here in front of him. He made the choice without thinking about it. He built up the fire, wrapped the woman in his coat and every blanket he had, and forced water down her throat. She coughed, choked, but kept it down. He heated snow in his canteen, made her drink that too, slow, steady, keeping her alive one swallow at a time. "What's your name?" Rowan asked. "Beth." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Beth what?" "Vance." Rowan sat back. Clara had said her sister was dead, said she'd heard the gunshot, but here she was, alive. Barely, but alive. "Clara thinks you're dead," Rowan said. Beth's eyes filled with tears. "I tried to find her, She coughed, hard enough to double over. "Silas, he caught me, beat me, left me here." "Why didn't he kill you?" "Wanted me to freeze, said it'd be slower." Beth's hands were shaking so hard she couldn't hold the canteen. Said Clara would hear about it, said it'd break her. Rowan's jaw tightened. That sounded like Silas. Efficient cruelty, the kind that did damage long after the body stopped hurting. "How long ago?" Rowan asked. 2 days, maybe 3, I don't know. Beth looked at him, really looked at him. "You're Rowan Hale. How do you know that?" "Clara told me about you, said you were a soldier, said you'd help." "She told you that before or after she thought you were dead?" Beth almost smiled. "Before, when we were running. She said if anything happened to her, I should find you." Rowan didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know what it meant that Clara had trusted him before she'd even knocked on his door. "Can you make it back to the cabin?" Rowan asked. "Not on my own." "Then we go together." "What about Helena?" Rowan looked north toward the marshals, toward the only real chance they had of ending this without more bodies. Then he looked at Beth, half dead in the snow, and made the second choice of the day. "Helena can wait," he said. He loaded Beth onto the lame horse, slow and careful, trying not to jostle her too much, and started the walk back. The mare limped. Beth slumped in the saddle, barely conscious, and Rowan kept one hand on the rifle, waiting for the ambush he was sure was coming. It came at dusk. They were crossing a frozen stream when Rowan heard the click of a hammer being pulled back. He stopped, didn't turn around, and waited. "Drop the rifle," a voice said behind him. Rowan recognized it. Garrett. "I drop it, you'll shoot me anyway," Rowan said. "Maybe, but at least it'll be quick." Garrett stepped into view, revolver aimed at Rowan's chest. He wasn't smiling anymore. "Silas wants the woman, both of them. You bring me to Clara, I let you live. And if I don't, then I shoot you, take the girl, and burn your cabin with Clara inside." Garrett shrugged. "Your choice." Beth stirred in the saddle. "Rowan." "Quiet," Rowan said, his eyes locked on Garrett. "How many men you got with you?" "Enough." "That's not a number." "6. Spread out in the trees. You so much as twitch wrong, they'll cut you down." Rowan believed him. Garrett was a lot of things, but he wasn't a liar. "Here's what's going to happen," Rowan said slowly. "I'm going to take Beth back to my cabin. You're going to let me. And then you're going to ride back to Billings and tell Silas I'm done running." Garrett laughed. "You think you're in a position to negotiate?" "No, but I think you're in a position to die." Rowan shifted his weight, just enough. "You got 6 men. I got 1 rifle. But you're standing 10 feet away and I'm faster than you think. I shoot you first, your men shoot me, and we all die here." Or you let me go, tell Silas where I am, and he gets what he wants without losing another deputy. Garrett's smile faded. You're bluffing. Am I? They stared at each other. Rowan's finger rested on the trigger guard. Not threatening, not yet, but close enough. You got a death wish, Hale, Garrett said finally. So I've been told. Garrett lowered the revolver an inch. Silas is going to kill you. You know that, right? He can try. He won't try. He'll do it, and he'll make it last. Garrett holstered the gun. But that's your problem, not mine. He whistled, sharp and loud. Men emerged from the trees, 6 of them, just like he'd said, all armed, all watching Rowan like he was a rabid dog. Let him go, Garrett said. One of the men stepped forward. Boss said, I know what he said, but Hale here just made a good point. We kill him now. We got nothing to show for it but bodies. We let him go. Silas gets everything he wants. Garrett looked at Rowan. You got 2 days. After that, we're coming with everyone. And we're not asking nice. Rowan nodded once. 2 days. Garrett mounted up, motioned for his men to follow. They disappeared into the trees, silent as shadows. Rowan waited until he couldn't hear the horses anymore. Then he started walking again, faster now, pulling the mare along. Beth was barely hanging on, mumbling things Rowan couldn't understand. Stay with me, Rowan said. We're almost there. It was a lie. They had 5 miles to go, the sun was setting, and Rowan's legs were starting to give out. But lies were all he had right now. They made it to the cabin an hour after dark. Clara was on the porch before Rowan even dismounted, shotgun in hand, eyes wild. Then she saw Beth slumped in the saddle, and the shotgun clattered to the ground. No, Clara whispered. No, that's not... She's alive, Rowan said. Clara ran forward, pulled Beth down from the horse, and held her like she was afraid she'd disappear. Beth's eyes opened just for a second, and she smiled. Hi, Clara, she whispered. Clara made a sound Rowan had never heard before, something between a sob and a laugh, and carried her sister inside. Rowan followed, legs shaking, and collapsed into a chair. Thomas was crying. Rose was crawling on the floor. The fire was low. Everything smelled like milk and smoke and something Rowan couldn't name. Clara laid Beth on the bed, Margaret's bed, and started stripping off the frozen clothes. The frostbite was worse than Rowan had thought. Black fingers. Black toes. Clara saw it and went very still. Can you save them? Rowan asked quietly. I don't know. Clara's hands were shaking. I don't know. She worked through the night, warmed Beth slowly, wrapped her in blankets, forced hot broth down her throat. Rowan helped where he could, but mostly he stayed out of the way. This was Clara's fight. He couldn't do it for her. By morning, Beth was breathing easier. The color had come back to her face, but her fingers were still black and Clara's face was gray with exhaustion. She needs a doctor, Clara said. Nearest one is in Shepherd's Bend. That's 8 miles. I know. Clara looked at her sister, at the ruin of her hands, and something in her broke. She sat down hard, put her face in her hands, and cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, exhausted tears that came from somewhere deep. Rowan didn't know what to do, didn't know how to fix this. So he just sat beside her, close enough that she knew she wasn't alone, and waited. After a while, Clara wiped her eyes and looked at him. You didn't make it to Helena. No. Why not? Found your sister instead. Clara's jaw tightened. You should have kept going. We need those marshals. We need her alive more. Rowan, I made a choice, Clara. His voice came out harder than he meant. Same choice you made when you knocked on my door. Same choice I made when I let you stay. We don't leave people behind. Not anymore. Clara stared at him. Then she reached out, quick, uncertain, and squeezed his hand. Just once. Just for a second. Thank you, she whispered. Rowan nodded. He didn't trust himself to speak. Beth woke up at noon. Her eyes were clear, her breathing steady, but when she tried to move her hands, she screamed. Clara was there in an instant, holding her down. Don't move them. It hurts, Beth gasped. I know it does. Clara looked at Rowan. We need to take her to the doctor, now. Garrett gave us 2 days, Rowan said. Then we use them. Clara stood, started gathering supplies. You stay here with the babies. I'll take her. No. Rowan, you're not going alone. Not with Silas's men out there. Rowan grabbed his coat. We all go. We bring the babies. We get Beth to the doctor. Then we come back and finish this. Clara wanted to argue. Rowan could see it in her face, but she didn't, because she knew he was right. They loaded Beth into the wagon, wrapped the babies in blankets, and started the 8-mile crawl to Shepherd's Bend. The road was rough, the wagon slow, and every bump made Beth cry out. But she held on, didn't pass out, didn't give up. You're strong, Rowan said, glancing back at her. Beth tried to smile. Runs in the family. Shepherd's Bend wasn't much. 20 buildings, 1 general store, a church with a crooked steeple, and a doctor's office that doubled as a barber shop. The doctor was old, half-blind, and smelled like whiskey, but his hands were steady when he examined Beth's fingers. Frostbite, he said, like it wasn't obvious. Bad case. I can save most of them, but these two... He pointed to her index and middle fingers on her right hand. These are gone. Beth's face went white. Gone? Dead tissue. If I don't take them, infection'll spread. You'll lose the whole hand, maybe the arm. Clara's hand tightened on Beth's shoulder. Do it. The doctor nodded, started preparing his tools. Rowan turned away, couldn't watch. He'd seen amputations in the war, men screaming, bones sawed through, blood everywhere. He didn't need to see it again. Outside, the town was quiet. Too quiet. Rowan scanned the street, the rooftops, the alleys. No one around. Not unusual for a weekday, but it felt wrong, felt staged. He was about to go back inside when he saw the riders. 5 of them, coming from the south, moving slow, deliberate. Rowan recognized the man in front, big, broad-shouldered, with a face carved from stone. Silas Crow. Rowan's blood went cold. He ran back inside, grabbed Clara. We need to go, now. Beth's in surgery. I don't care, Silas is here. Clara's face went white. She looked at her sister on the table, at the doctor holding a saw, at the door where Silas was about to walk through. Finish it, Clara told the doctor. Fast. The doctor looked at her like she was crazy. I can't just... You can, and you will. Clara pulled out the knife she kept in her boot, set it on the table. Or I'll do it myself. The doctor swallowed hard and started cutting. Beth screamed. Clara held her down. Rowan grabbed the babies, checked the back door, and found it blocked. No way out except through the front. Through Silas. The riders stopped outside. Rowan heard boots on the boardwalk, spurs jingling. Then the door opened, and Silas Crow walked in like he owned the place. He was bigger than Rowan remembered, taller, meaner. His face was scarred from the war, from fights, from a life spent hurting people. He looked at Rowan, at Clara, at the babies, and smiled. Well, well, Silas said. The family reunion I've been waiting for. Rowan raised the rifle. Get out. Silas didn't move. That's no way to greet an old friend, Hale. We were never friends. True. But we were brothers once. Brothers in arms. Silas's eyes flicked to Clara. And now you're protecting my property. That's touching. She's not your property, Rowan said. See, that's where you're wrong. Silas stepped closer. Everything in this territory belongs to me. The girls, the land. Even you, if I want. He looked at Beth on the table, at her ruined hand, and laughed. Looks like someone's been clumsy. Clara moved fast. Faster than Rowan had ever seen her move. She grabbed the doctor's saw, still slick with Beth's blood, and held it to Silas's throat. Say that again, Clara hissed. Silas didn't flinch, just looked down at her, still smiling. You're not going to kill me, Clara. Try me. If you do, my men outside will burn this building with everyone in it. Your sister, the babies, Rowan, all of them. Silas's voice was calm, almost gentle. Is that what you want? Clara's hand shook. The saw pressed harder against his neck, drawing blood. But she didn't move. Couldn't move. That's what I thought, Silas said. Rowan lowered the rifle. Not because he was giving up, because he was thinking, counting. 5 men outside, Silas inside, Doctor useless, Beth helpless, 2 babies, Clara armed but outnumbered. The math didn't work. Not here. Not now. What do you want? Rowan asked. Silas looked at him. Same thing I've always wanted. What's mine? He nodded at Clara. She comes with me. Beth too. Rose too. You and your boy walk away. Simple. No. No? Silas tilted his head. You willing to die for them, Hale? If I have to. What about your son? He willing to die too? Rowan's hands tightened on the rifle. Thomas was quiet in his arms, sleeping, completely unaware that his life was being negotiated. Leave the boy out of this, Rowan said quietly. Can't do that. See, I need leverage, and that baby's the best leverage I got. Silas stepped back, giving Clara space. Here's the deal. Clara comes with me now. I leave the rest of you alone. She doesn't. I take everyone, starting with him. He pointed at Thomas. Clara lowered the saw. I'll go. No, Rowan said. I'll go, Clara repeated, her voice flat. But you let them all live. Beth, the babies, Rowan. You don't touch them, ever. Silas considered. And if I break my word, then I'll hunt you down and kill you myself. Silas laughed, loud and genuine. I almost believe you. Believe it. They stared at each other. The room was silent except for Beth's ragged breathing and the babies starting to fuss. Then Silas nodded. Deal. But if I find out you're hiding anything, any maps, any information, anything that could hurt me, the deal's off. Understand? Clara's face didn't change. I understand. She handed the saw back to the doctor, walked to Rowan, and took Thomas from his arms. She held him close, whispered something Rowan couldn't hear, and kissed his forehead. Then she did the same with Rose. Take care of them, Clara said to Rowan. Clara, don't... Promise me. Rowan's throat closed up. He couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stand there while Clara Vance walked toward the door, toward Silas, toward whatever hell he had waiting for her. But before she reached him, Beth screamed, not from pain, from rage. She sat up on the table, her ruined hand dripping blood, and pointed at the window behind Silas with her good hand. She's not alone, Beth said, her voice strong despite everything. And you're already dead. Silas turned. The window exploded inward, glass spraying everywhere. A shotgun blast tore through the room, missed Silas by inches, and took out one of his men standing in the doorway. Rowan didn't think, just moved. He grabbed Clara, pulled her down, covered the babies with his body. The second blast came from the back of the room. The doctor, holding a rifle Rowan didn't know he had, firing through the wall at the riders outside. Chaos erupted, men shouting, horses screaming, gunfire from every direction. And through it all, Silas Crow stood perfectly still, looking at the broken window, at the shooter Rowan couldn't see yet. Then she stepped into view. A woman. Rail-thin, wild-eyed, holding a shotgun like she'd been born with it. She was dressed in rags, covered in dirt, and her face was a mask of fury. Remember me, Silas? She said. Silas's smile finally died. Maggie. That's right. The woman, Maggie, pumped the shotgun. You thought you killed me, thought you broke me, but I'm still here and I brought friends. More figures appeared in the doorway. Women. 5 of them, all armed, all staring at Silas like they'd been waiting years for this moment. Clara gasped. The girls from the house. Every last one, Maggie said. We followed Beth, waited for the right time, and now... She aimed at Silas's head. Now it's over. Silas's hand moved toward his gun. Rowan shot him in the shoulder. Silas went down, cursing, blood spraying. His men outside tried to rush the door. The women opened fire. Bodies dropped. Horses bolted. And in the middle of it all, Clara grabbed the doctor's saw and stood over Silas. It's over, she said. Silas looked up at her, bleeding, beaten, and for the first time Rowan had ever seen, afraid. You won't kill me, he said. Clara smiled. You're right. I won't. She dropped the saw, stepped back, and let the women surround him instead. The women didn't shoot Silas. That surprised Rowan more than anything. They stood in a circle around him, 5 of them, guns steady, faces hard, while he bled onto the doctor's floor. Maggie held the shotgun to his head, her finger on the trigger, and nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Do it, Silas said. Blood ran from his shoulder, pooling under him. Go ahead, Pull the trigger. Pull the... Maggie's hand shook. Not from fear, from something else. Something Rowan recognized from the war. The moment right before you cross a line you can't uncross. He wants you to, Clara said quietly. She was standing now, Rose in her arms, watching. Death's easy. Living with what he's done, that's harder. He deserves to die, Maggie said. Maybe, but you don't deserve to be the one who does it. Maggie's eyes filled with tears. He killed Sarah, beat her so bad she couldn't walk. Then he threw her in the river and watched her drown. Claire's face went pale. I didn't know. Nobody knew. That's how he works. He makes people disappear. Maggie pressed the shotgun harder against Silas's temple. And now I'm going to make him disappear. Then you'll hang, Clara said. The law won't care what he did. They'll only care what you do. The law works for him. Not all of it. Clara looked at Rowan. The map? Where is it? Rowan had forgotten about the map. It was still in his coat pocket, folded and blood-stained. He pulled it out, handed it to Clara. She unfolded it, showed it to Maggie. Beth made this before we ran. Every house Silas owns, every judge he's paid off, every lawman on his payroll. It's enough to bury him. Maggie stared at the map. How do we know anyone will listen? Because I know someone who will. Rowan stepped forward. Federal Marshal in Helena. Man named Hatch. Served with him in the war. He's clean. Doesn't take bribes. Doesn't look the other way. And you trust him? Maggie asked. With my life? Maggie looked at the other women. They were younger than her, some barely 20, and they all had the same haunted look in their eyes. The look of people who'd seen things they couldn't forget. What happens to us? One of them asked. She was small, blonde, with bruises still visible on her neck. If we let him live, what happens to us? Clara walked over to her, touched her shoulder gently. You go home. All of you. You go back to your families, or you start new ones. You get jobs. You get married if you want. You have babies. You live. She looked at Silas, bleeding and broken on the floor. And every day he's locked up, you'll know you beat him. Not by killing him, by surviving him. The blonde woman started crying. So did another. Then all of them, one by one, lowered their guns. Maggie was the last. She kept the shotgun aimed at Silas's head for another 30 seconds, her whole body shaking. Then she stepped back. Tie him up, she said, before I change my mind. Rowan used rope from the doctor's supplies to bind Silas's hands. The big man didn't fight, didn't say anything, just watched Clara with eyes that promised this wasn't over. You think this ends it? Silas said finally. You think one map is going to stop me? No, Clara said. But it's a start. Outside, the bodies of Silas's men were sprawled in the street. 3 dead, 2 wounded. The wounded ones were trying to crawl away, leaving blood trails in the snow. One of the women, a redhead with a rifle, walked up to them and kicked their guns out of reach. What do we do with these? She asked. Leave them, Rowan said. When the marshal comes, they're evidence. The doctor finished with Beth's hand, wrapping it in clean bandages. She was pale, sweating, but conscious. When she saw Silas tied up on the floor, she smiled. Told you, she whispered to Clara. Told you we'd get him. Clara knelt beside her sister, took her good hand. You did. You really did. Beth's smile faded. My fingers... gone. I'm sorry. Don't be. Beth squeezed Clara's hand. I'd lose all of them if it meant he couldn't hurt anyone else. The doctor cleared his throat. She needs rest, real rest, in a real bed. I can keep her here for a few days, but after that she comes home with me, Clara said. With us. Rowan looked at her. She was still holding Rose, still covered in blood and glass and everything that had just happened. But there was something different in her face now, something that hadn't been there before. Hope, maybe. Or just the absence of fear. The ride back to the cabin took 4 hours. They loaded Beth into the wagon, gentle as they could, and the women followed on horses they'd taken from Silas's men. Maggie rode up front with Rowan, shotgun across her lap, eyes scanning the horizon. You really think this marshal will help? She asked. I do. And if he doesn't? Then we try someone else. And someone else after that, until we find someone who will. Rowan glanced at her. You got somewhere to go after this? Maggie was quiet for a long time. I had a farm once, in Nebraska. Husband died of fever, couldn't keep up the payments. Bank took it. That's when I ended up in Billings. She looked down at her hands. I don't know if I can go back. You can, Rowan said. Might not be easy. Might take time, but you can. How do you know? Because I did. Maggie studied him. What were you before this? A soldier, then a farmer, then a widower. Rowan's hands tightened on the reins. Then a father, then whatever I am now. And what's that? Rowan didn't have an answer. When they reached the cabin, Clara moved fast. She got Beth inside, settled her into the bed, and started cleaning wounds and changing bandages. The other women helped, boiling water, tearing cloth for dressings, keeping the babies quiet. They worked together like they'd been doing it for years, and maybe they had. Survival made people efficient. Rowan stood on the porch, watching the sunset. The snow was turning gold, then orange, then dark. Somewhere in Shepherd's Bend, Silas Crow was locked in the doctor's cellar, waiting for whatever came next. And somewhere north, a federal marshal who might or might not listen was probably eating dinner, completely unaware that his help was about to be needed. The door opened behind him. Clara stepped out, wrapped in a shawl that used to be Margaret's. She looked exhausted, looked like she'd aged 10 years in the last 10 hours. Beth's sleeping, she said. Good. Maggie and the others are staying the night, too dangerous to travel in the dark. Rowan nodded. The cabin was going to be crowded, but he'd slept in tighter quarters during the war. They'd manage. You should have killed him, Clara said quietly. Rowan looked at her. I thought you didn't want that. I don't. But I also don't trust that he won't find a way out of this. Men like Silas always do. Not this time. How can you be sure? Because we're not doing this alone anymore. Rowan gestured toward the cabin, toward the women inside. They're witnesses. Beth has the map. We have the bodies. That's more evidence than most men like Silas ever face. Clara wanted to believe him. Rowan could see it in her face. But she'd been running too long, seen too much, to trust that anything was really over. What if the marshal doesn't come? She asked. Then I'll go get him myself. And if he won't listen? Then I'll make him listen. Clara almost smiled. You sound like a soldier again. Maybe I am. They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars come out. Inside, someone started singing, soft and low, a song Rowan didn't recognize. One of the women, maybe. Or Beth. The sound drifted through the walls, fragile and strange. Margaret would have liked them, Clara said. Rowan turned to her. What? The women. Margaret would have liked them, would have invited them in, fed them, made them feel safe. Clara pulled the shawl tighter. She sounds like she was a good person. She was. I'm sorry you lost her. Rowan didn't know what to say to that. I'm sorry you lost your father. We all lose people. Clara looked at him. Question is what we do after. And what are you going to do? Clara was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Stay, if you'll let me. Rowan's chest tightened. You don't have to ask. I know. But I want to. Clara turned to face him fully. You saved my life, Rowan. You saved Beth. You saved Rose. You didn't have to do any of that. You could have turned me away that first night. Let me freeze. Let Silas have me. But you didn't. Anyone would have. No, they wouldn't. Most people would have shut the door and pretended they didn't see anything. But you opened it, and you kept it open. Her voice cracked. So I'm asking, can we stay? Rowan looked at her, really looked at her. She was strong, stronger than anyone he'd ever met, maybe. But she was also tired. Tired of running, tired of fighting, tired of being alone. He understood that, understood it better than he wanted to. Yeah, Rowan said. You can stay. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them away, nodded once, and went back inside without another word. Rowan stayed on the porch a little longer, listening to the singing, thinking about everything that had happened. A week ago, he'd been ready to die, ready to give up, let the grief take him, stop fighting. Then Clara knocked on his door, and everything changed. He still didn't know if it changed for the better. Wouldn't know until Silas was really gone. until the marshal came, until all of this was truly over. But for now, in this moment, it felt like enough. The next morning, Rowan rode to Helena alone. He left before dawn while everyone was still sleeping. Left a note for Clara, short and simple, just said he'd be back in 3 days with the marshal or an explanation. Took the best horse, the rifle, and the map, nothing else. The ride was hard, cold, lonely, but Rowan pushed through it, kept his head down, kept moving. He'd done longer marches in the war with less food and worse weather. This was nothing. Helena was bigger than he remembered. More buildings, more people, more noise. He found the marshal's office on the main street, tied his horse outside, and walked in. Marshal Hatch was older now, grayer, heavier, with lines around his eyes that hadn't been there in Tennessee. But he still had the same no-nonsense way of sitting, the same way of looking at people like he was deciding whether to trust them or arrest them. "Rowan Hale," Hatch said, not getting up. "Heard you were dead." "Heard the same about you." "Disappointed?" "Not yet." Hatch smiled, just a little. "What do you want?" Rowan pulled out the map, spread it on the desk. "I want you to arrest Silas Crow." Hatch looked at the map, then at Rowan. "That's a big ask." "It's a small map." "You know who Silas Crow is? What he runs?" "Yeah, that's why I'm here." Hatch leaned back in his chair, studying Rowan. "Why now?" "Silas has been operating for years." "Why come to me today?" "Because today I got proof." Rowan tapped the map. "Names, locations, money trails, everything you need to shut him down." Hatch picked up the map, examined it closely. "Where'd you get this?" "Woman named Clara Vance. Her sister made it before they ran." "And where's the sister now?" "In my cabin, missing 2 fingers because Silas left her to freeze." Hatch's jaw tightened. "He'd do that to a lot of people?" "More than I can count." Hatch set the map down, looked at Rowan for a long time. "You know what happens if I go after Silas? He's got connections. Judges, politicians, half the territory's in his pocket. Then dig them out too." "Easy to say, harder to do." "I didn't ride 3 days to hear about how hard your job is," Rowan said. "I rode here because you're the only lawman I trust. You going to help or not?" Hatch stood, walked to the window, looked out at the street. "I've been trying to get Silas for 2 years. Every time I get close, evidence disappears. Witnesses change their stories. Files go missing." He turned back to Rowan. "You really think this map is different?" "I know it is." "How?" "Because the women who made it don't scare easy, and they're ready to testify." Hatch raised an eyebrow. "How many women?" "6, maybe more." Rowan stood. "They're in Shepherd's Bend right now, waiting, and Silas is locked in a cellar, bleeding from a gunshot wound I gave him. You want him? He's yours. But you need to move fast." Hatch grabbed his coat, his gun, his badge. "Get your horse. We leave in 10 minutes." They rode hard, stopping only to rest the horses. Hatch brought 3 deputies, men he trusted, men who weren't on Silas's payroll. They made it to Shepherd's Bend in 2 days, arrived at dusk, and went straight to the doctor's office. The cellar door was open. Silas was gone. Rowan's blood ran cold. He ran down the stairs, found the ropes cut, the window broken. No blood, no sign of a struggle, just an empty room and the smell of kerosene. "He's gone," one of the deputies said. Rowan turned to the doctor, who was standing in the doorway, pale and shaking. "What happened?" "Garrett came yesterday morning, said he was moving Silas to the jail in Billings." The doctor's voice was barely a whisper. "I tried to stop him. He pulled a gun, said if I interfered he'd burn my office." "And you let him?" "What was I supposed to do, fight him alone?" Rowan grabbed the doctor by the collar, slammed him against the wall. "You were supposed to keep him locked up." Hatch pulled Rowan off. "Easy. Getting mad at him won't help." "Then what will?" "We go to Billings. We get Silas. We finish this." Hatch looked at the doctor. "Where's the jail?" "Main Street, but you won't get in. Garrett's got men everywhere." "Then we'll go through them." Rowan didn't wait. He ran back to his horse, started riding toward the cabin. Hatch called after him, but Rowan didn't stop, didn't slow down. All he could think about was Clara, alone with the women, unprotected, while Silas was out there somewhere planning his next move. He made it to the cabin in under an hour. The door was open. Rowan's heart stopped. He dismounted, rifle ready, and walked inside. The cabin was empty. No Clara. No Beth. No babies. No women. Just overturned furniture, broken glass, and blood on the floor. On the table, written in what looked like ash, were 4 words. Come to Billings. Alone. Rowan stood there staring at the message, his hands shaking. He'd left them to get help, to do the right thing, and Silas had taken them anyway. He heard horses behind him, Hatch and the deputies, finally catching up. What happened? Hatch asked. Rowan pointed at the table. Hatch read the message, swore under his breath. It's a trap. I know. You go there alone, you're dead. I know. Then don't go. Rowan looked at him. You have kids, Hatch? No. Then you don't understand. Rowan reloaded the rifle, checked the revolver. That's my son in there, and the woman who saved his life. I'm going. Not alone you're not. Hatch motioned to his deputies. We'll come with you. Hit them hard, hit them fast. Get your people out. He'll kill them the second he sees you. Maybe, but he'll definitely kill them if you walk in there alone. Rowan wanted to argue, wanted to do this his way, the way he'd done everything since Margaret died. Alone, reckless, not caring if he made it out. But Hatch was right. Going in alone was suicide. And suicide wouldn't save anyone. What's the plan? Rowan asked. Hatch smiled. Same plan we used in Tennessee. We go loud. They rode to Billings under cover of darkness. 6 men on horseback, armed and angry. The town was bigger than Shepherd's Bend. 30 buildings, 2 saloons, a hotel, and the jail. Hatch scouted it first, came back with bad news. Garrett's got 10 men inside, maybe more. Silas is in the back holding your people in the cells. How many cells? 3. Women in 1, your boy in another, Clara in the 3rd. Rowan's jaw tightened. They hurt? Can't tell from outside, but they're alive. That was something. Not much, but something. We go in through the front, Hatch said. Draw their fire. You go around back, get your people out. We'll cover you. And if it goes wrong, then we all die. Hatch checked his rifle. But at least we'll die trying. They moved at midnight. Hatch and his deputies hit the front door hard. Shotguns, rifles, shouting. Rowan heard the gunfire start, heard men screaming, and ran around back. The rear door was locked. Rowan kicked it in, went inside low and fast. 2 guards in the hallway. Rowan shot the first one, clubbed the second with the rifle butt. Both went down. He found the cells at the end of the hall. Clara was in the last one, standing at the bars, holding Thomas. Her face was bruised, her lips split, but she was alive. Rowan, she said, relief and fear mixed in her voice. Where are the keys? Garrett has them. Then we do this the hard way. Rowan aimed the rifle at the lock, fired. The lock shattered. He pulled the door open, grabbed Thomas, handed him to Clara. Where's Beth? Next cell, Rose 2. Rowan shot that lock open as well, pulled Beth and Rose out. The other women were in the 3rd cell, all of them terrified but unhurt. We need to move, Rowan said. Now. They ran, out the back into the alley, toward the horses Rowan had left waiting. Behind them, the gunfire was getting louder, closer. Then Garrett stepped out of the shadows, revolver aimed at Clara's head. Going somewhere? He asked. Rowan raised the rifle. Let her go. Can't do that. Silas wants her alive. You, on the other hand, Garrett shifted his aim to Rowan. You, he wants dead. Then shoot me. Let them go. Not how this works. They stood there, locked in a standoff. Rowan could see Garrett's finger tightening on the trigger, could see Clara holding Thomas, her body between him and the gun, could see Beth behind her, one-handed, useless in a fight. Then a shotgun blast tore through the night. Garrett's chest exploded. He dropped without a sound. Behind him, Maggie lowered the smoking shotgun. Told you I'd change my mind. Rowan didn't wait. He grabbed Clara, pulled her toward the horses. Maggie covered them, firing at shadows, at movement, at anything that looked like a threat. They made it to the edge of town before Silas appeared. He was on horseback, rifle in hand, blocking the road. Blood still stained his shoulder, but he sat straight and steady, like he hadn't been shot at all. End of the line, Hale, Silas said. Rowan dismounted, stepped in front of Clara and the others. It's over, Silas. The marshal's here. You're done. Am I? Silas looked past Rowan toward the jail. Flames were rising now, orange against the black sky. Looks to me like your marshal's got bigger problems. Hatch can handle himself. Maybe. But can you? Silas raised the rifle. I'm going to kill you, Rowan. Then I'm going to take Clara. Then I'm going to sell that baby for more money than you've ever seen, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. Rowan didn't answer, just raised his own rifle. They fired at the same time. Rowan's shot hit Silas in the chest. Silas's shot hit Rowan in the side. Both men went down. Clara screamed. She ran to Rowan, dropped to her knees beside him. Blood was pouring from the wound, hot and fast, soaking through his shirt. Stay with me, Clara said, her hands pressing against the wound. Don't you dare die on me. Rowan tried to speak, but couldn't. His vision was going dark. He could hear Thomas crying, could hear Clara shouting his name, could hear everything fading away. Then Hatch was there, dragging Rowan to his feet. We need to move, now. They got Rowan onto a horse, Clara holding him upright. Silas was still on the ground, bleeding out, watching them ride away with eyes that promised this wasn't over. But it was. By the time they reached Helena, Silas Crow was dead. The bullet had cracked 2 ribs and torn through muscle, but it missed everything vital. The doctor and Helena, a real one this time, not half drunk and working out of a barber shop, said Rowan was lucky. Said another inch to the left and he'd have bled out before they made it to town. Rowan didn't feel lucky. He felt like he'd been kicked by a horse and left in a ditch. He woke up 3 days later in a boarding house room that smelled like carbolic and old wood. Clara was asleep in a chair beside the bed, Thomas cradled in her arms. Both of them looked exhausted. Both of them were still there. Rowan tried to sit up. Pain shot through his side, white-hot and immediate. He gasped, fell back against the pillow. Clara's eyes opened. Don't move. Wasn't planning on it. Rowan's voice came out rough, like he'd been gargling gravel. How long? 3 days. You've been in and out. Clara stood, careful not to wake Thomas, and poured water from a pitcher on the nightstand. She held it to Rowan's lips. Drink. He drank. The water was cold, clean, the best thing he'd tasted in weeks. Silas? Rowan asked. Dead. Bled out in the street before anyone could get to him. Clara set the cup down. Hatch said it was your shot that did it, straight through the heart. Rowan closed his eyes. He should have felt something, relief, satisfaction, maybe even grief. But all he felt was tired. The others? He asked. Safe. Maggie and the women are staying here in Helena. Hatch got them rooms, food, jobs if they want them. Beth's with them, her hands healing. Clara sat back down. Rose is with Beth. They're both fine. And you? Clara looked at him. I'm here. I can see that. I mean, I'm staying here with you. If that's still... She stopped, choosing her words carefully. If that's still what you want. Rowan opened his eyes. Clara was watching him like she was braced for rejection, for him to say he'd changed his mind, that the offer to stay was only good until Silas was dead. Yeah, Rowan said. That's what I want. Clara's shoulders sagged with relief. She didn't cry, didn't smile, just nodded once and looked away. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, Helena was alive with noise. Wagons, voices, someone hammering somewhere. Life going on like nothing had happened, like people weren't dead, like the world hadn't almost ended. What happens now? Clara asked finally. Now we heal. Rowan shifted, wincing. Then we go home. Home. The cabin, the ranch, whatever you want to call it. Rowan looked at her. It's yours too now, if you want it. Clara's hands tightened on Thomas. I don't know how to do this. Do what? This. Stay. Build something. Her voice cracked. I've been running for so long, I don't remember what it's like to stop. Then we'll figure it out together. Rowan reached out, took her hand. It was rough, calloused, strong. One day at a time. Clara looked at their hands, at the way his fingers wrapped around hers. Then she squeezed back. One day at a time, she repeated. Rowan stayed in Helena for 2 weeks. The doctor wanted him there longer, but Rowan couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand being trapped in a room, couldn't stand the noise, couldn't stand being away from the land that was the only thing left of Margaret. Clara understood. She packed their things, borrowed a wagon from Hatch, and they left on a cold morning when the sky was the color of old metal. Beth came with them, so did Rose. And Maggie, who said she didn't have anywhere else to go and figured she might as well see what all the fuss was about. The ride back took 3 days, slow, careful, stopping whenever Rowan's side started bleeding through the bandages. Clara drove the wagon, didn't complain when they had to camp in the cold, didn't say anything when Rowan woke up screaming from dreams he couldn't remember. When they finally saw the cabin, small and dark against the snow, Rowan felt something in his chest loosen. "Home," he said. Clara looked at the cabin, at the barn, at Margaret's grave on the hill. "It's smaller than I remembered." "It'll get bigger." "How?" "We'll build it bigger." They did. That first winter was hard. 5 people and 2 babies crammed into a one-room cabin, everyone stepping on everyone else, tempers flaring over stupid things like who left the door open or who used the last of the coffee. But they made it work. Rowan and Maggie built a second room onto the cabin, then a third. Beth learned to cook one-handed, got so good at it Clara stopped trying. Clara took over the accounts, the supplies, the planning. Turned out she had a head for numbers that Rowan didn't. By spring, the cabin didn't look like the same place. It was bigger, louder, more alive. Thomas was crawling now, getting into everything. Rose was walking, wobbling around like a drunk trying to find the door. The women had planted a garden, started raising chickens, talked about getting more cattle. Rowan watched it all happen and wondered what Margaret would think. Whether she'd be happy he'd moved on or hurt that he'd let someone else into the life they'd built together. He'd never know. And that was the hardest part. One night in late March, Clara found him standing at Margaret's grave. The snow had melted, revealing the wooden cross Rowan had carved with her name and the dates that bookended her life. "You come here a lot," Clara said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah." "You talk to her?" "Sometimes." Clara stood beside him, close but not touching. "What do you say?" Rowan thought about it. "I tell her about Thomas, about how big he's getting, how loud he screams when he's hungry. I tell her about the ranch, about the work that needs doing. I tell her—" He stopped. "What?" "I tell her I'm sorry." "For what?" "For not being enough, for letting her die, for moving on when I should have—" Rowan's voice broke. "For everything." Clara was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "She wouldn't want you to be sorry." "How do you know?" "Because no one who loves someone wants them to stop living." Clara looked at the grave. "My father used to say that grief is love with nowhere to go, that it sits inside you, heavy and useless, until you find a way to turn it into something else." "And what did he turn it into?" "Stubbornness." Clara smiled a little. "He missed my mother every day until Silas killed him. But he didn't let it stop him from raising us, from building the ranch, from living. He said living was the best revenge against death." Rowan thought about that, about Margaret, about the war, about all the people he'd lost, about whether living really was enough. "I don't know how to let her go," Rowan said quietly. "Then don't. Keep her here." Clara touched his chest, right over his heart. "Keep her in the stories you tell Thomas. Keep her in the way you build things, the way you take care of people. She's not gone, Rowan. She's just different." Rowan looked at Clara, really looked at her. She wasn't Margaret, would never be Margaret, but she was strong in ways Margaret hadn't been, hard in ways Margaret had never needed to be. And she was here, standing beside him, choosing to stay when she could have run 100 times. "Thank you," Rowan said. "For what?" "For knocking on my door." Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. "Thank you for opening it." They stood there until the stars came out. 2 people who'd lost everything learning how to build something new. Hatch came to visit in April. Brought news from Billings. Silas's operation had collapsed without him. The houses were shut down, the girls sent home or given jobs in town. The corrupt lawmen were either arrested or run out. Garrett's body had been found in the jail, burned beyond recognition, but everyone knew who'd killed him. "Maggie's not in trouble for that, is she?" Rowan asked. "Officially? It's unsolved. Unofficially?" Hatch smiled. "Nobody's looking too hard." "Good. Hatch handed Rowan an envelope. This came for you. Federal government. Seems they're grateful for the map, for the testimony, for everything you did. They're offering a reward. Rowan opened the envelope. Inside was a banknote for $500. That's a lot of money, Clara said, reading over his shoulder. It's blood money, Rowan said. Maybe, but it's also a new barn, a new plow, seed for planting. Clara looked at him. It's a future. Rowan stared at the note. Margaret would have known what to do with it, would have had a plan, a list, a whole vision for how to spend it, but Rowan had never been good at planning, only at surviving. We split it, Rowan said finally. Between everyone who helped. Maggie gets a share, Beth gets a share, you get a share. Rowan, I mean it. None of this happens without all of you. The money should go to all of you. Clara looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't, just nodded. Hatch stayed for dinner. They ate beef stew and bread Beth had made, drank whiskey Hatch had brought, and talked about things that didn't matter, the weather, the cattle prices, the new railroad line coming through. Normal things, safe things. After Hatch left, Rowan stood on the porch and watched the sun set. The sky was red and gold, the kind of sunset Margaret used to love. She'd stand right here, in this exact spot, and say the light looked like the world was on fire. Rowan didn't see fire, just saw tomorrow coming, same as always. Clara stepped out beside him. You okay? Yeah. You sure? Rowan looked at her. I'm getting there. Summer came fast. The garden grew. The cattle multiplied. Thomas started walking, took his first steps right into Clara's arms. She cried when it happened, tried to hide it, but Rowan saw. He's not yours, Rowan said gently. I know. Clara held Thomas close. But he feels like mine. Then he is. Clara looked at him, surprised. What? Margaret's gone. I'm all he's got. And you... Rowan stopped, trying to find the right words. You've been more of a mother to him than I've been a father. So if you want him to be yours, then he's yours. Clara's hands tightened on Thomas. What about you? What about me? Do you... Clara's voice dropped. Do you want me to be his mother? Rowan thought about it. About what it meant. About Margaret, about Clara, about the strange family they'd built from broken pieces. Yeah, Rowan said. I do. Clara kissed Thomas's head, closed her eyes, and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for months. That night, after everyone was asleep, Rowan lay awake and thought about the future. Not the distant future, years and decades away, but the immediate one. Tomorrow. Next week. Next month. For the first time since Margaret died, it didn't feel empty. Beth's hand healed crooked. The missing fingers left her off balance, clumsy with things she used to do without thinking. But she adapted. Learned to write left-handed, learned to cook with one hand doing the work of two. By fall, you couldn't tell she was missing anything unless you looked close. Rose grew fast. By her first birthday, she was talking in broken sentences, following Thomas everywhere, laughing at things only babies found funny. Clara watched her like she was afraid she'd disappear, but Rose was solid, real, here to stay. Maggie left in September. Said she'd saved enough from her share of the reward money to buy back her farm in Nebraska, said she wanted to try again. Clara hugged her goodbye, made her promise to write. Maggie promised, but they both knew she wouldn't. Some people weren't built for letters. After Maggie left, the cabin felt quieter, emptier, but also more settled, like the chaos had finally smoothed into something sustainable. One night in October, Clara asked Rowan a question he'd been dreading. Do you ever think about remarrying? They were sitting by the fire, alone for once. Beth had taken the kids to bed early, and the cabin was quiet except for the crackling wood. No, Rowan said honestly. Why not? Because I already had a wife. Don't need another one. Clara looked at him. What if you wanted one? Rowan's chest tightened. Is this you asking? No. Maybe. I don't know. Clara wrapped her arms around herself. I don't know what we are, Rowan. We live together. We raise the kids together. We work the land together. But we're not married. We're not... She stopped. We're not what? We're not anything official, and I don't know if that matters. Rowan thought about Margaret, about the promises he'd made, the vows he'd spoken. about whether those promises died with her or lived on. It doesn't matter to me, Rowan said finally. Official or not, you're part of this. Part of the ranch, part of Thomas's life, part of mine. That's enough. Is it? Yeah. Clara looked at the fire. What if it's not enough for me? Rowan's stomach dropped. You want to leave? No, I want... Clara turned to face him. I want to know that this is real, that we're building something that lasts. That you're not just letting me stay because you feel guilty or because you need help or because... Clara. Rowan reached out, took her hand. I'm not letting you stay. You're staying because you want to, and I'm here because I want to be. That's real. That's as real as anything gets. Clara's eyes searched his face. You mean that? Yeah. Then marry me. Rowan blinked. What? Marry me. Not for the law, not for the church, just for us, so we both know where we stand. Clara's voice was steady, but her hand was shaking. I'm not asking you to forget Margaret. I'm asking you to choose me. Choose this. Choose us. Rowan didn't know what to say. He'd never imagined this moment, never thought past surviving the day. But here it was, real and solid and waiting for an answer. He thought about Margaret, about the way she used to laugh, the way she'd looked at him on their wedding day, the way she'd made him promise to take care of Thomas. And he thought about what she'd want. Not for herself, she was gone, but for him, for their son. She'd want him to live, to choose life over grief, to build something new from the ashes of what he'd lost. Okay, Rowan said. Clara stared. Okay? Yeah, let's do it. You're serious? I don't joke about things like this. Clara laughed, surprised and relieved, and something else Rowan couldn't name. She leaned forward, kissed him. It wasn't passionate or desperate, just quiet, certain, a promise made without words. When she pulled back, she was smiling. When? Whenever you want. Tomorrow? Rowan smiled too. Tomorrow. They got married the next day in front of the fireplace, with Beth as witness and the kids crawling around their feet. No preacher, no vows written down. Just two people promising to keep choosing each other, one day at a time. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was real. The years that followed weren't easy. Some winters were brutal, some summers too dry. Cattle died, crops failed, money got tight. But they survived. They always survived. Thomas grew into a boy who looked like Margaret, but had Rowan's stubbornness. Rose grew into a girl who was fearless and loud and everything Clara used to be before Silas broke her. Beth stayed, helped raise them both, never married but never seemed to mind. They added more rooms to the cabin, then tore it down and built a proper house. Added more land, more cattle, more everything. The ranch grew. The family grew. People in Shepherd's Bend started calling them the Hales. Not just Rowan. All of them. Clara Hale, Beth Hale. The Hale Ranch, like they'd always been one unit, one name, one family. Rowan liked that. Liked the way it sounded. Liked the way it felt. Sometimes, late at night when everyone was asleep, Rowan would stand on the porch and look at Margaret's grave. The wooden cross had been replaced with a stone marker, clean and simple, with her name and the dates. He didn't talk to her anymore. Didn't apologize. Didn't ask for forgiveness. He just said thank you. For Thomas. For teaching him how to love. For giving him a reason to keep going when everything else fell apart. And then he'd go inside, climb into bed next to Clara, and sleep without nightmares. 10 years after Silas Crow died, a stranger came to the ranch. Rowan was in the barn when the man rode up, tall, clean-shaven, wearing a suit that was too nice for ranch work. He dismounted, looked around, and walked toward the house. Rowan intercepted him. Help you with something? I'm looking for Clara Vance. Rowan's hand moved toward the rifle leaning against the wall. Who's asking? My name's William Crow. I'm Silas's brother. Rowan's blood went cold. You need to leave. I'm not here to cause trouble. William raised his hands. I just want to talk. About what? About what happened. About Silas. About... William's voice dropped. About making things right. Rowan studied him. He didn't look like Silas. Smaller, softer, with kind eyes that Silas never had. But that didn't mean anything. Wait here, Rowan said. He went inside, found Clara in the kitchen kneading bread. "Someone's here to see you." Clara looked up. "Who?" "Says his name's William Crow." Clara's hand stopped moving. "Silas's brother." "Yeah." "What does he want?" "To talk, but I can send him away if you want." Clara wiped her hands on her apron, took a deep breath, and walked outside. William was standing by his horse, hat in hand. When he saw Clara, he flinched. "Mrs. Hale," he said quietly. "It's just Clara." "Clara, then." William shifted his weight. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see. And I understand if you want me to leave, but I came all the way from Chicago because I needed to tell you something." "What?" "I'm sorry." William's voice cracked. "I'm sorry for what Silas did. To you, to your sister, to all those women. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't stop it. I told myself it wasn't my business, that he was an adult, that I couldn't control him. But that was cowardice, and I've regretted it every day since." Clara stared at him. "You want forgiveness?" "No, I don't deserve that." William looked at the ground. "I just wanted you to know that not everyone in my family is like him. That some of us wish we'd done more. Wishing doesn't bring back the dead." "I know." William reached into his coat, pulled out an envelope. "This is from my inheritance. Silas left me everything when he died. I don't want it, so I'm giving it away. To the women he hurt, to their families, to anyone who needs it." He held out the envelope. "This is your share." Clara didn't take it. "How much?" $10,000. Clara's eyes went wide. Rowan stepped forward. "That's too much." "It's not nearly enough," William said, "but it's what I have." Clara looked at the envelope, at William, at Rowan. Then she took it. "I'm not forgiving you," she said. "I know. And this doesn't make what Silas did okay." "I know." "But," Clara's voice softened. "Thank you." William nodded, put his hat back on, and mounted his horse. "If you ever need anything, you can reach me through the address in the envelope." He rode away without looking back. Clara opened the envelope, looked at the banknote inside, and started crying. Not sad tears, not happy tears, just tears. The kind that came from carrying something heavy for too long and finally being able to set it down. Rowan held her while she cried. Didn't say anything, didn't need to. When she finally stopped, she looked up at him. "What do we do with it?" "Whatever you want." Clara thought about it. "We give half to Beth. She lost more than any of us. And the other half? We use it to help other women, the ones still running, still hiding, still afraid." Clara folded the note, put it back in the envelope. "We make sure no one else has to knock on a stranger's door in a blizzard and hope they're kind." Rowan smiled. "Margaret would have liked that." "Yeah, she would have." They built a house in Shepherd's Bend with the money, called it a refuge, a safe place for women with nowhere else to go. Clara ran it with Beth, opened the doors to anyone who needed them. Word spread. Women came from Billings, from Helena, from places Rowan had never heard of. Some stayed a few days, some stayed months. Some never left. The house grew, so did the ranch, so did the family. Rowan and Clara had 2 more children, a boy named Samuel and a girl named Margaret. Thomas grew up, took over the ranch, married a woman from Shepherd's Bend. Rose became a teacher, opened a school for girls who'd never had the chance to learn. Beth lived to be 70, died peacefully in her sleep, and was buried next to Margaret on the hill. Years turned into decades. The cabin became a house, became a legacy. And through it all, Rowan Hale kept Margaret's cross standing on the hill, kept her memory alive in the stories he told, kept her promise by raising their son into a man she would have been proud of. But he also built something new, something that was his and Clara's and everyone who'd helped them survive. He built a home, a real one. Not just walls and a roof, but a place where people chose to stay because they wanted to, not because they had to. And in the end, that was enough. On a cold morning in late November, 40 years after Clara had knocked on his door, Rowan Hale stood on his porch and watched the sun rise over the Montana frontier. His hair was white now, his hands gnarled from decades of work, his body aching in ways it hadn't when he was young. But he was alive, and so was everything he'd built. Clara stepped out beside him, just as old, just as worn, just as stubborn as the day they'd met. "Morning," she said. "Morning." They stood in silence, watching the light turn the snow gold. You ever think about that night? Clara asked. The blizzard. The knock. Every day. You ever regret opening the door? Rowan looked at her. At the lines around her eyes, the gray in her hair, the hands that had worked as hard as his, at the woman who'd saved his son's life and stayed to build one with him. No, Rowan said. Not once. Clara smiled. Good, because I don't regret knocking. They went inside together, into the warmth, into the noise of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and a life that had started with grief, but had grown into something bigger. And on the hill behind the house, 2 gravestones stood side by side. One old, weathered by time. One new, waiting for the name that would one day be carved there. Margaret Hale, beloved wife and mother, and beside it, space for another. Clara Hale, who chose to stay. The world kept turning, the ranch kept growing, the family kept living. And the story of the knock in the blizzard, of the stranger who brought danger and hope in equal measure, became the story they told their children and their children's children and everyone who came after. Not because it was perfect, not because it was easy, but because it was true. And sometimes the smallest act of courage, opening a door, choosing to stay, deciding to live instead of just survive, can change everything. Not just for one person, but for generations. That was the legacy Rowan Hale left behind. Not wealth, not fame, just proof that even in the darkest moments, when grief feels like the only thing left, there's still a choice. You can close the door, or you can open it, and sometimes what walks through changes your life forever.